Still in the woods, I'm assuming. Is he in the woods? Anyway, he texted me today, so I think he's alive. And he's alive. All right, that's good. All right, because doing this full time for a day was really hard, actually. But it's been very good. I got to do a shut-in visit today, and had a meeting and a Bible study, and prep for this. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful day. And it's my 32nd anniversary of dating my wife. Anybody else do that? Dating anniversary? Or is that just an excuse to go out again? Yeah. So she was very attracted to this 145-pound guy with a mullet with stonewashed jeans that were rolled up with zips all over his face. She was gorgeous. So I'm not sure what... It all worked out. All right. When I took her home for the first time, everybody's like, really? She's with you. I'm like, yes. So, stop. Don't tell her don't tell her I played Dungeons and Dragons in middle school. Okay? She's like, that's not a cool thing. No. I hid a lot of things from her. That's all right. It worked out, didn't it? Yeah, but we're gonna celebrate tonight afterwards, so I'm excited about that. All right. What's on the screen? Check-in. Did everybody check in already on your mobile apps? That is just a little update on that. I know Sheila's even building, like the Wednesday lunch, Bible study, getting their names down so that Luke could check everybody in for them really quickly. We're still doing that. We're going to do the home groups, everything. So that's still coming around, which is great. All right, I created these slides, so I better know what I'm talking about here, right? All right, so I will begin with a word of prayer and invocation, so will you all join me? In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, it's so good to gather in the middle of the week amongst our busyness, just to take a little time to focus on you and your word. Your word is awesome, especially this text from Revelation and the throne room of heaven. It's just hard to imagine, but thank you for giving us a glimpse of that. Thank you for your word that sustains us and your spirit that uses that word to empower us to do your will. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, so Luke's been going through the catechism with you all, and I don't want to disrupt his flow, and I didn't want to do what he was going to do. So I thought this was maybe my only opportunity. I don't know how often I'll get to do this. Honestly, I hope not often, because that means maybe something bad happened to Luke. So I don't really want that to be the case. But because I like teaching. Actually, I'm loving 7th and 8th grade. I forgot what it was like to hang out with 7th and 8th graders, and I think Luke and I are both a little bit 7th and 8th graders all the time. Would you agree with that? I don't know. I'm having a good time, so it's great. But why do we even do catechism? So this goes all the way back to this Greek word of catechesis. Or catecheo, right? So this catechesis, this is in Galatians 6. Paul talks about this, about teaching the faith or to be instructed in the faith. And historically, all the way from the New Testament church, all the way until now, there's been some form of this. And it's varied in its appearance. So if you thought about the early church, they were teaching, he's teaching Timothy, and people were instructing. And we see in the Old Testament instructing their children. But just even since then, the church has been finding the best ways to teach the faith, right? Now, we know the best way typically is parent to child, and that's the way it's been done forever. But a lot of times before baptism in the Middle Ages, in the early church, they would go through a catechesis time, like teaching them the faith. And these are for adult converts. This is still a very common thing, like adult confirmation. Anybody go through like an adult confirmation formally or informally? Anybody? Yep. Or you've come maybe from a different denomination, like, what are you, Lutherans? I've done a Lutheranism 101 here, which talks about these things. But then when Luther shows up, he's kind of miffed that it seems like the people in general don't know the basics of the faith, and many times neither do the pastors. So they implore him to start, hey, could you write some of this down? And so this is when he comes up with the small catechism, the basic teachings of the faith, which is so essentially almost 500 years now, we've had a version of this in the 6 chief parts. So it says right at the beginning, it says, in a simple way in which the head of the house is to present them to the household. So Luke talked about this early on, but the idea that whoever's in charge, the spiritual leader of that household, is supposed to like take these things and teach them. Unfortunately, is something going on there? Okay, I'm like, all right. Yeah, I was like, nope, wrong. So unfortunately, I would say in modern society, with the decay of the family, there's less opportunity for families to convey the faith, right? It's getting to be a harder and harder thing. And so the modern way, or the more modern way of catechesis, who went to catechism on Wednesday nights when you grew up, right? And who taught that? The pastors taught that, right? So it kind of got outsourced. The catechism got outsourced to the professionals, and this saw the whole Sunday school thing started in the 1800s. Very noble thing. They saw a bunch of kids in the slums who couldn't read. So they thought, you know what? On Sundays, let's teach them to read. You know what we should teach them to read? The Bible. This seems like a great idea. This is a good idea. And so you see even the whole school movement come out of this. And then the institutionalization in the industrial age comes around. And it kind of just becomes part of our culture. So you got to think this whole Sunday school and the catechism being done by the pastor or somebody else besides the parent is a very modern thing. Probably only 150 years at most we see this trend, which brings us to where am I at here? Well, let's go with the catechism is, and then I'll say where we're at today, all right, and what we're seeing the shift to do. So we have the 10 Commandments, the Creed, the Lord's Prayer, the Sacrament of Holy Baptism, Sacrament of the Altar, and the Household Chart of Duties. And so Luke is walking you through this, right? And so where's he at? Like the 3rd or 4th petition of the Lord's Prayer now or something like that. And so this is what we do. This is what Andrew does. This is what Beth does. This is what our parents are instructed to do with their children, because Luke made videos when he was much younger. Anybody seen those videos? You should definitely check those out. They're hilarious. They're so awesome. Has anybody seen these videos of Luke teaching catechism? Yeah, go to our YouTube channel. They're linked under resources on our Living Faith webpage. You just check a couple out. And what's scary is he almost sounds exactly the same. Doesn't he, like if you told him to redo the video right now, I'm not sure how much he would actually say differently, which is good and bad, but anyway, they're fun to watch. I would encourage you to go out there. But so what we have here at Living Faith is we encourage the parents to actually do this thing, to instruct their children in the faith. But a lot of parents are like, I don't really know that much about the catechism, which is a good thing for the parents to also learn. So I did this with my son here. I used Luke's videos. I went through he's got a document. We watched the videos. We answered the questions. We had good conversations about it. And I walked another young man through it who was baptized and was confirmed here last year, Cole. And a situation. Am I his dad? No. So why would I bring him through the catechism? Because there's no one else that was going to do that, right? So this is where the church should fill in. And honestly, if some of you out there know the catechism or know the faith, and you're in a relationship with a young person who doesn't, this is why we see a lot of grandparents actually catechizing their grandchildren even now. Logan just got baptized here, and his grandpa is walking him through the catechism right now. I just talked to another family here from Living Faith that they're taking their children through. The Lord's Supper is something that a lot of people believe you need to be confirmed before you can take the Lord's Supper. That's been a tradition. It's not biblical per se. We do have given and shed is also a teaching. And once you've gone through that teaching, you can talk to Luke and I. If everybody's in agreement, you understand what's going on here, go ahead and take that. You can actually start taking catechism taking communion while you're doing confirmation. And why would we do that? Well, what's that do for us? Does it strengthen our faith? Does it remind us of the promises of God? right? I'm trying to think of a bad reason to do, so it's good. It's a good thing for young people. When our young people come up, do you see, sometimes I'm always like, are you, and I look at mom and dad and I look at them, they're like, oh yeah, yep, and so we trust parents to guide their children in the faith, which is why one of our goals for the church is to do this new paradigm. So in the old days, you would send your kids to church where they would learn the faith, and then they would go home, which in theory works great as long as you're supplementing what's going on at home, or it's being confirmed, or it's being talked about. The church has done not a great job of doing this because honestly, they were doing a job they weren't called to do in the first place. We are supposed to be here to equip the parents to do this thing that God has called them to do, and we are kind of usurping that a little bit. Luke has been way ahead of this, and honestly, this congregation is way ahead of this. I've had conversations with several people around the country. I took a class last spring on this, and I got names of some other folks, and they told me the same things. Like, your congregation is way ahead of the curve as far as understanding this new paradigm, that it would be a home-centered, church-supported. And I'd rather say family-centered, because now it's always not locale in the house, right? It might be with a grandparent or an uncle or a friend or somebody else. So we're trying to say, you know what, the faith is going to be taught where you live, not just an hour on Wednesdays. And the other thing that I would say is that faith is caught more than it's taught. So who shows up here on Wednesday nights? I don't know, the kids of the parents that show up here on Wednesday nights. Who comes to church on Sunday? I don't like the parents with kids, They are watching. You can say whatever you want, but whatever they're watching you do. So you're actually teaching all the time your children. And this catechesis is what Luther said. He wrote the small catechism, right? He said even he would never be beyond the small catechism. If he could just understand the small catechism, he's like, I'd be the greatest theologian ever, which shows you the ease of it, but also the depth of actually understanding the faith. This is the great thing about it. A little kid can get it, right? And the smartest person on the planet will never probe the depths of the faith, which is a beautiful thing. What they say, out of the mouth of babes, right? So I'm just encouraging you all, as we go through this, one thing I could see happening in next year, because we have a goal of actually helping families be equipped to do this. We'll be going, if the one service thing happens and that sticks, and we'll have Bible study opportunities probably right after service, this would be an option for especially the young families in our congregation. We have young families who are already doing a wonderful job within their home groups of even including the young people with their instruction of home groups and what they're learning that night. Models like that are exactly what we're talking about. So how do we equip this church to catechize in I would say, a more godly manner, the order of authority, which is parents to children? Yeah, question.
Is there a large catechism?
Yes. Oh, I'm glad you asked that question. All right. So Luther writes a small catechism, mostly for heads of households and also for pastors, just to get the basics. But then he's like, well, we need a little more than that. So then he writes the large catechism, which is meant for mostly pastors, right? But then this is all in part of the Book of Concord, which is like essentially the teachings of the faith of the Lutheran Church. That book even espouses more, all right. Has anybody read the Book of Concord? Well, I know John, I'm assuming he has. Yep, yeah. It's very exciting, isn't it? It's like reading a 1,000-page legal document. Should I admit this? Of course, I have to now, because I said it, right? So somebody gave me the Book of Concord. Kendall Meyer up in Fort Dodge gave me the Book of Concord in 2006-ish, I don't know, let's say 2006. And it's about that thick. You can look bookofconcord.org, free. Anybody can go in it, search it. I use it a lot. I did it on sermon prep again this week. I did it for stuff tonight. You can look up topics. It's got the solid declaration, all the articles of the faith. It's great. So I'd encourage you, small catechism, large catechism, which is part of the Book of Concord, and just keep going. And I could give you a guide, what might be a more palatable way through it. But yeah, I like it in small chunks because it's so dense and it reads very kind of, because he was a lawyer, right? And he's writing to other theologians, so it's a different level. Any questions before we dismiss the youth? I took a little bit of the game time from the 7th through 12th graders, so I apologize for that. But any questions? Are you scared of family-centered, church-supported? Or I think this congregation's like, duh, of course. We've been doing this forever. But we're going to keep moving more and equipping in this direction. So I'm excited for that. So, all right, youth, peace out. And then the adults, Revelation 4. Oh, there's my water. All right, I'm going to ask the question that every pastor hates to ask because he knows he's going to get an answer. And the answer is always interesting. So I'll just ask this question to all of you. Okay, first of all, who was here Sunday? Okay. Have had mixed reactions to that sermon? But my question to you is, what do you remember, or what stuck out about that sermon? Or what did you learn? And what do you think you were supposed to do with that information? Anybody want to postulate? Anything that stuck out? No oceans in the new heavens and the new earth. That's I could have left it out. But it was in the commentary and it linked, and just couldn't help myself. Okay, so new heavens, new earth. There's no sea. What else stuck out? You're like, I don't remember your sermon. I'm like, I know, that's normal. I'm glad one person was paying attention.
Well, I get that aspect of, God is infinite, and to see what he's really like, you can't.
So God, I'm repeating this for the live stream. So God is infinite, and you can't really see him.
The version of God that John of Patmos saw was in the context of what he knew in the culture he was in, and we would maybe see something different that was also not completely correct and a bit symbolic.
So the idea of the apocalypse, right? This vision, you're trying to describe this thing that's really hard to describe, and it's hard to describe. The radiance of the glory of the Lord shining, right? Like stones of sapphire. Do you remember that part? Or REO Speedwagon, I mentioned them. Doesn't mean.
I don't know, the only person who did know that third artist that you mentioned, who I obviously can't remember now, but
Talk about creator and the creation.
Very good. Yeah, you know what? That was not in my manuscript, but I've used that for many years. The observation was worshiping the Creator and not the creation, seeing in the creation as an avenue to see the Creator, right? Which is what the rock concert analogy, right? I'm not worshiping that person. I'm enjoying the music and their talent, and whoever made that person like that is an amazing, wonderful thing. Redirecting your worship, or in your nature, like Luke's out in the woods, so he would look at nature and not worship the tree. He's worshiping the God who made the tree. Seeing through that. I'm glad I added that last minute. Anything else you remember from the sermon? Was there anything freaky deaky in the room? Remember flying around? The angels, yes, the angels were in there, yeah. And I'm going to show you some pictures of some artist renditions of those, which are not the little cherub-looking baby with the wings. That's That's not a thing. I got down that rabbit hole way too far today. So, based off the sermon, what do you think you're supposed to do with that? It's a great sermon, wasn't it? I wished a few people I talked to after the service, I talked to them and said, all right, good. And then I said to them on their way out the door, now go to worship. What's the idea there?
Oh, it's not just on Sunday.
It's just not on Sunday, it's all the time, and you embody worship with every little thing you do. Remember that part? This is why pastors don't ask these questions. They're like, nobody's listening, nobody cares. Well, you all acted like you did. I appreciate the honesty. No. So I do this to my family sometimes too, because we're supposed to write a focus and a function statement. What are they supposed to learn, and what are they supposed to do with that information, right? And so I've written focus and function statements for that sermon, and sometimes I actually hear them back from people, but most of the time I'm like, that's not what I want. Whatever. John, you know what I'm talking about, don't you? You're like, yeah, I'm glad it's that guy up there having to deal with this right now. He's enjoying retirement a lot right now. All right, so Revelation 4, 1 and 2. I'm going to just, so is this what Luke, I think this is what Luke, just exegetically going through this and letting you ask questions. I really want you to ask me some questions. So I'm really going to leave time for you to ask some questions on this, because there's some really weird stuff in here that we could, I've got lots of rabbits to chase here, but I'm going to let you tell me which one to chase, hopefully, okay? After this, I looked, and behold, a door standing open in heaven. And the first voice, which I had heard speaking to me like a trumpet, said, come up here, and I will show you what must take place after this. At once I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne stood in heaven with one seated on the throne. All right, what do you think? Anything stand out, or if you remember from the sermon anything, or? Yeah, so you remember, I brought in Paul with that verse. He's like, whether I was in the body or in the spirit, I don't know. God knows, right? So it's got to be a freaky experience, okay? It's got this out-of-body experience maybe, or in the body experience, but there's a door. And Jesus saying, come up here. And he probably literally walks through this door. And these are Jesus' words. Those are red letters right there. And yeah. So we don't know for sure, but we do. Then there's 3 or 4 other references that we went through. The 2 Corinthians 12:1 and Ezekiel 8, 1 through 3. Also Ezekiel 11:1. We see them also having similar experiences as John did here, being brought into the presence of God, the throne room of heaven. So let's see here. Ezekiel even said that he was between earth and heaven. You remember in the reading from 2 Corinthians, Paul said that he was taken up into the third heaven. Remember that part? So what is the third heaven? I don't know. Any guesses? Well, there's have you heard of the heavens, the heavenly realms, right? So there's the air, the atmosphere, and then there's the heavenly realms, and there's this whole other thing called with God, right, in heaven, right? So I think that's what I've seen on commentaries is he's essentially saying it's not like the heavens the way we talk about it. It's the heaven, the third heaven, is what he's describing there. All right. Anything else? Because we got some other better things I think to cover here. Any questions on that? Who's on the throne? God is on the throne. Yep. And then what do we see happening here? And he who sat there had the appearance of jasper and carnelian, and around the throne was a rainbow that had the appearance of an emerald. Looks like the Wizard of Oz. Yeah. I have no idea. I'm guessing that's some kind of jewel-looking thing. Anybody know? Somebody Google it quick. Somebody Google carnelian.
My other comment is
Good thing I didn't mention that in the sermon, right? Yeah. So it's what? It's a stone. I was right. Okay, good. It's a stone. Must be a precious stone.
Semi-precious
Quartz stone. Reddish. All right, thank you. Love the internet. Except when it tells you you're wrong all the time. So, but the rainbow idea that, and I had gone through some of the texts about, and what's funny is a lot of my the Brightman commentary that Luke's been using to go through this references the Apocrypha quite a bit. And the Apocrypha, it would be the intertestamentary books between Old and New Testament that are in there. You can get even a Lutheran Bible with Apocrypha, but in general, after the Reformation, they took a lot of these books out because they kind of shifted the focus. There was like, God wasn't prophesying anymore. He wasn't teaching anymore. This is a time when he was silent, remember, until John shows up. So those books like that talk about, Enoch and there's wisdom, and if you Google it, just Google the Apocrypha. We went to the Museum of the Bible this summer with our family. I would strongly encourage you all to go there. It's in D.C., really well done. It was opened in 2019. One of the directors is Dr. Eric Kloa, who was actually one of Luke's professors and started a wine club with him there, of course. But I got to meet him this summer. And so we're up in the Bible room, and it shows all these different types of Bibles, and they're talking about, here's a Bible with Apocrypha. And the kids are like, what's that? I'm like, oh, here we go. So you can go through that, and it shows the table of contents of these different Bibles. So it was, how many floors was it, Sarah? Like 6, 5, or, I don't know, 5 or 6 floors, and so he said, go into the Hebrew room, and then go into the New Testament room, and then do this, and then do this, and it's an amazing tour. So I would encourage you, if you're in D.C., well worth the visit. It's only a block off the mall. Is that what you say? Yeah, about a block off the mall. So it was cool. And I should have got that T-shirt. I could be wearing that shirt right now. It's got a museum of the, it just says Bible Nerd. Is that what it said? Bible Nerd, yeah, Bible Nerd. I just am. I think they do have an online store. Maybe that would be a good Christmas gift. Is there anything else there? That the apparent around the throne is the rainbow. So the sign of the rainbow, we should say that is a sign of mercy, a sign of God's promise. That rainbow is for the Christian. Now we're not worshiping the creation; we're worshiping the Creator. But that particular thing in this creation is to point directly to a promise that has been to you and to me, to never be, we're never going to be flooded, and we're not destroyed, and that God is merciful. So every time you see a rainbow, every Christian should think of the one true God right there. And well, everybody likes rainbows, right? I mean, they're gorgeous when you see them. Have you ever seen the rainbows like when they're up in an airplane and they're 360? They see those images? In fact, that's the halo idea. That's where that comes from. In ancient Jewish tradition, that's what they were really thinking about. So when they're seeing the bow, they're like, it's not just the one that gets cut off. It's the whole circle that's just even better. So any other questions on that? So for us Christians, this is what it's always going to be, all right? The promises of God, so which is good. We ready for 4? Okay. Around the throne were 24 thrones, and seated on the thrones were 24 elders, clothed in white garments with golden crowns on their heads. From the throne came flashes of lightning and rumblings and peals of thunder, and before the throne were burning 7 torches of fire, which are the 7 spirits of God. So anybody remember from the sermon, who did I say based on, who are the 24 dudes up there? Yeah. 12 tribes and the 12 apostles. We don't know for sure, but we're thinking that's Old Testament, New Testament, but it embodies all the people of God, right? They're helping lead worship here of the one true God. What else do we notice here? They are clothed in white garments. Has this been a theme in Revelation here? And how are their garments made white? By Tide OxyClean? these are the robes of righteousness washed clean by the blood of the Lamb, right? They've been given these robes of righteousness. And not just these robes of righteousness, they have golden crowns on their head, the crowns of righteousness. And I think I went down a rabbit hole with this, if I remember right. If I can see my slides. Yes. Matthew 19:28. And Jesus said, truly, truly, I say to you, in the new world, when the Son of Man will sit in his glorious throne, you will have followed me, will also be the 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. That's not where I wanted to go. Anyway, we're getting there. So they have given the crowns, they've given this crown, right? And we've all co-heirs with Christ. That's the idea, that we will judge with him. Now, this is a little, I went down this rabbit hole pretty far today. I don't like the idea, I mean, Jesus is coming back to do what? To judge the living and the dead, right? And he's saying, y'all are going to help me with that too. Now, that doesn't sound like a very fun idea. And I've always said, judging is God's job, not mine, right? But here's what I read in this commentary, that the 12, what are these 12 apostles, what were they called to do? And honestly, they're to preach, right? To proclaim the gospel, right? Everywhere. Did some people reject that gospel? Do some people still reject that gospel? Do we proclaim the gospel now? And is it still being, right? So we're still kind of participating in this activity like the apostles did. We're still doing that. We're proclaiming the gospel to the world. Some will reject, which I don't like that idea either. I hate that idea, actually. So it says, as they were the nearest to Jesus in earthly activity, so they will have the closest portion and dignity of the exalted Messiah. As they proclaim salvation to the 12 tribes, they will also pronounce the verdict upon not only the unbelieving Israel according to whether they accepted or declined this offer. So where was the gospel proclaimed first? In Israel, right? That's where it started, right? And then it's gone out from there. So this activity started there. Now, did all the Jews convert? No. Are all the Gentiles converting? No. It's the same kind of activity that is continuing. And it says, sits on the throne judging the 12 tribes of Israel. That's really the judgment of everyone who is either in or out. Do I know who's in or out? I got a good idea. I'm like everybody who baptizes and believes, when he professes Christ, who's been given it, right? All these good things. When will we all know publicly who's in and who's out? When Jesus comes back, the last day. So are those who are believers with the Lord right now, that have passed away, are they with the Lord right now? Yes. When will we publicly know that? Well, either when you get there or on the last day. Same thing. Are some separated from God right now and in hell? Yes. When will we know for sure on that? On the last day. This is the public separation of the sheep and the goats. So a lot of people, that maybe not, I have grandparents who weren't believers, right? And they passed away in the faith. And I remember praying over my grandfather's bedside when he was passing away. He couldn't speak. I don't know. I don't like thinking that he's in hell right now. That's a really awful thing to think about. But could be the case. I'm not the one who gets to, decide. But someday I will know. Which is why some people use this whole awful teaching, this hard teaching, to say, yeah, everybody's in. It's all good. Everybody's good. Everybody's in. Bible doesn't say that, not even close. So I don't know where they're getting that from. Besides, that's what my heart wants. That's what I want. But I am going to have to trust God on these things. Why does every time I talk about stuff end up in election? It's a whatever. All right. 2 Timothy 4:6-8. For I am already being poured out as a drink offering at the time of my departure's come. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Henceforth, there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have loved his appearing. This is that crown of glory that you are all promised. Did anybody see any politician use verse 7? Yeah, I saw a politician say those words yesterday. I was like, wrong faith, buddy. We're talking about the faith, not the faith in the government or something like that. Right? This is the faith. This is the faith in Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior to the end. Fighting good fight. This is Paul saying this to Timothy. So sometimes this gets a little taken out of context. Let's put it that way. Each Christian is promised a crown of life. It's also in Revelation 2:10. I don't know if you want to flip back. Revelation 2:10, or in 12:1, the woman and child were crowned with 12 stars, signifying that she, that is the church, suffers. She will be victorious because of the victory of the Christ child. Just looking through my commentary notes here. Matthew 25:31 and 22:3, we see the Lamb. Matthew 25:31. When the Lord Christ comes at the end, he will sit on his throne of glory. Also, God's saints will sit on the thrones because of the enthronement of Christ. When the Son of Man will take his seat on the throne of glory, those who follow him will also sit on the thrones. This is in Matthew 19:28 and Luke 22:30. So we get elevated to this majestic level of being co-heirs with Christ, reigning and ruling on the new heavens and the new earth. So what's our job in the new heavens and the new earth? What do you think? Oh, question, go ahead. Yeah. So what was the original charge of Adam and Eve? What was their job? Yep, they were co-stewards, right, with Christ. They were supposed to cultivate and curate and take care of it, and they had a work to do, right? So they essentially worked with God to do this stuff, which is kind of the image we're seeing in the new heavens and new earth. We're going to have something to do. We're going to be doing this. Well, I'm realizing this retirement thing is a very modern invention as well. It seems to not be working out for some folks. Yeah, what do they say? Average person dies within 7 years of retirement. I don't know if that's so maybe don't retire early. I don't know. Anybody know who's retired who has nothing to do and is really bored and you see them wasting away in front of you? Anybody know somebody like that? Or are you that person? It's not a good thing, is it? So you got to have some kind of purpose. When humans don't have purpose, they don't last a long time after that. So a lot of you, I believe, if I told you what's your purpose, you could probably list a lot of things about that. And if you can't list anything, then you need to talk to somebody, and because otherwise because God has got you alive for a reason, and it's not to just consume and live off whatever. Your job is something. He's got it. So even in the resurrection, we're going to have some charge. Will we have any pastors anymore? Nope. Don't need to proclaim the gospel anymore. This is great. Will we have any police officers anymore? Nope. No more crime. Will we have any judges? Nope. I wonder if we'll have teachers. I don't know. Definitely not math. That was like, they all get sent to, the other place. I hope I don't. All right. Are we ready to move on here? So I think the reason I had picked all those things was this crown of righteousness, this thing that we're going to get And then Revelation 4:6. And before the throne there is a sea of glass like crystal. This is the idea of calmness, of peace with God. Same thing, and I read that account in Exodus 24 when they all ate with him. Same thing. I visited someone today, read some of Psalm 23, eating in the presence of my enemies. My cup is overflowing. That imagery is the same as what we're describing here. Eating and drinking with God in a peaceful situation. Even if the rest of everything else is a storm, with God there is peace forever. And it's a beautiful thing. The glassy sea, there's a whole bunch in here. Who is the only one who can actually calm the sea? God is the only one. Who's actually the only one that can make peace between us and God? Christ, right? This is the thing. If you look at Romans 8:23 through 25, it says, God's people were still on earth. They were separated from the eternal glory, which in faith they longed to inherit. That's Romans 8:23 through 25. 2 Corinthians 5:1 through 10. 1 Peter 1:3 through 9. Since sin is the cause of the separation, the sea could be said to symbolize separation from God because of his judgment over and against the sin. The Old Testament sea monster Leviathan inhabited the sea and caused it to churn and boil and rage, as in Job and in Matthew and in Psalms. Nothing on earth was his equal. Humanly possible, we could not overcome the Leviathan. We could not cause this chaos, this evil, this sin problem. We can't do anything about it. Only God can kill Leviathan and calm the sea. That's the imagery here. Yahweh will slay the Leviathan. He's also called the serpent. On the day of judgment, Yahweh will slay him. And he's also, the ancient serpent is also called the devil and Satan. And so whenever you ever heard like raging seas is like a description of things are going really poorly or bad or chaos. Has anybody ever been in sea before like that? That's really bad. Or anybody living in a sign like that right now where it's turbulent? And you're just like, I would take some peace right now. I think, I was telling Sarah this the other day, I think that's one reason I don't know, I think I grew up in Iowa my whole life, and I don't like wind. But it's always windy here. And so, but when we have a calm day, I'm like, oh, this is so nice. And I'm like, oh, that's like what they're talking about here. It's like, and I was looking at that pond, like I looked at those retention ponds, and it's like a sea of glass. I was like, oh, wow, that looks pretty awesome. Let's go with that in heaven. Anybody else like calm like me? I don't know, just like calm. At times, except when it's 100 degrees. Then I'm like, I want wind. Questions on this? Sea of glass, like crystal. All right, this is where it gets a little crazy. And around the throne, on each side of the throne, are 4 living creatures full of eyes in front and behind. The first living creature like a lion, second living creature like an ox, third living creature with the face of a man, and the fourth living creature like an eagle in flight. And the 4 living creatures, each of them with 6 wings, are full of eyes all around and within. And the day and the night they never cease to say, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. Revelation song. Love it. All right. What do these things look like? Well, we see descriptions in Isaiah 6. Ezekiel's got some descriptions. We know, just in general about heavens, there's a hierarchy, right? There's like some top dogs, and that's what we're kind of seeing here. The ones that are tending to God in the throne room of heaven. That's like the most important one. And then you see them all the way come down. And a lot of the angels we see that interact with people take on more of a human form.
So these are not angels.
Yes, these are angels. Yes, they are angels. Yep.
The archangels.
They're seraphim and cherubim is what they think. We don't think, it doesn't say. It doesn't say. But I'm going to show you some artist renditions of what these might look like. So these might be completely wrong. But I thought, you know what, this is the time to bring this stuff up so we can look at it and talk about it. What do you think of that thing? So you can see the face of the ox, the man, the lion, and what would be on the other side? The eagle, right? So you notice a lot of Christian schools have the mascot of what? The lions, the eagles. What else do they have? I don't know. But it comes a little bit from it comes from this, right? And what did I say in the sermon about what do these four faces represent? It might be the four gospels. It might be the four corners of the earth. It might be, I don't know, symbolic stuff, right? You want to see some more pictures? This is an artist's idea of what, those parts might look. Oh, and then the eyes all around. The whirling wheel of eyes. I don't know about you, but this does not look like a Hallmark card to me. I'm not getting the Happy Valentine's Day vibe on this. So, the little cherubs and stuff. So I would encourage you, go on, if you are interested in these angel things, there's some great stuff. I did a sermon on angels in 2017. I went and looked back up. That was very early in my preaching career, right? I'm sure that recording hopefully is destroyed. So, but yeah, these are awfully magnificent and powerful creatures. Does anybody remember any stories from the Bible where God uses some angels to wreak some havoc on some folks? Like he just struck down 180,000 soldiers in one night with one angel? That kind of stuff. It's like these things they're very powerful, and they can waylay anything they want. These particular angels are doing what, though? What are these angels doing? And whatever the living creatures give glory and honor and thanks to him who is seated on the throne, who lives forever. The 24 elders fall down before him who is seated on the throne and worship him who lives forever and ever. So the angels are flying around. They're tending to God. They're singing this holy, 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 this agios, agios, agios refrain. And then what's happening with the elders? They're leading all the people following this worship. So these angels are leading worship. They're worship leaders. And then we have these elders who are also, and then what do the elders do in response? They cast their crowns down before the throne, saying, "Worthy are you, O Lord and God, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and by your will they existed and were created." So we've got this amazing scene. It's the Te Deum. Has anybody heard of that? The Te Deum? Yeah. I don't know. It must be a Latin term for holy, 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 singing songs or something. Do you know what it is? I don't know. Somebody can Google that maybe, Te Deum. Yeah, it's like a glory God song or something. As the winged creatures continually or at intervals sing this refrain, 24 elders representing the entire people of God using a stanza which praises God as their creator, the song of the winged creatures moves and directs the elders to fall down before God on his throne and worship him. As an act of worship, the 24 elders cast before God's throne their golden crowns, indicating that they share in Christ's victory only because of God's mercy and grace, like the rainbow. And then the 24 elders sing their hymn of praise, which they worship God as their creator. In this stanza, they worship God not only as their creator, but also as the creator of everything. And they can sing this hymn of praise because in Christ's victory, they have been restored before God's holy presence. All glory and honor and power is attributed and given to God because he has created them and has now restored them through Christ. The church fathers were correct in the ancient creeds of the faith. The first article confesses God the Father in his work of creation. This is followed immediately by the second article concerning Christ's redemptive work. For creation came first, then after its fall, the redemption wrought by Christ. The first could not remain without the second. And so John first sees and hears the reports of praise of God the Creator. Then, as he continues to relate this inaugural vision of God's heavenly glory, he describes the environment of the Redeemer, Jesus Christ. That's just a beautiful description of what's going on here. A worship service. Yeah. Yeah. All people. Yeah. So from what I believe, they are God's people, all of God's people praising and worshiping. These 24 would be indicated as the leaders, but it's kind of like what I was describing up here. We have a worship leader that may direct worship or music, but who's praising God, really? All of God's people, right? So we will be. But from what I can see, the throne room of heaven, they're going to have these 24 there, potentially. That's what the vision looks like anyway. But we're going to be we're all going to have the crowns. We're all going to have the robes. We're all going to be singing the praises. We're all going to be casting our crowns. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be amazing. And one thing I have heard, especially from dudes sometimes, when they're honest, who really don't enjoy worship services, they're like, "You're telling me heaven is one big long worship service? I'm not interested." Ladies too, maybe, but in general, dudes are like, I'm not a big singer guy. I'm not a big, praise and worship guy. I'm like, this vision of the throne room of heaven is to show us what true magnification of the Lord looks like, what true worship looks like. Joining the heavens and the angels in the heavenly realms, praising God for everything he's done for us. And yes, there will be a worship going on all the time, but there's also, I believe, there'll be a work. There'll be relationships. There'll be, what it was supposed to be. And we'll have real bodies on this real sphere. So it's not going to be some floaty thing, which is what I think a lot of people just get drawn into thinking it's this floaty realm that you're just going to be floating around all the time. Like, no. This is on the earth with bodies. This is going to be a tangible, real scenario of this, all of us able to worship God and all of us to see him, and the angels are present. And God did not send his son for the angels. Some fell. Some didn't fall. He did not die to redeem angels. He died to redeem us, which is why we are actually higher than angels in God's eyes, which is we've been given his image. So it's 6:55. Questions? Anybody excited for heaven? You're like, it's got to be better than this last hour. It's truth. It will definitely be much better. So when you think about your loved ones in heaven, right, that they're doing this, they're getting to participate, and they're getting to worship God right now, which is joyful. Yeah.
The first death, when we leave our body behind, we're doing all this worshiping in spirit.
We're incarnational, so we're doing it and so this is where when right now it's a very Western idea to separate mind, body, and spirit. In fact, when you die and your body goes into the ground here, and your spirit goes to be with the Lord, super unnatural, super weird, super not the way it's supposed to be, right? So when you are worshiping. What are you worshiping in? Mind, body, spirit, you, right? A person. It's a very Western Platonic idea, actually, to split these things out. And we talk about this all the time. I even pray that way, don't I? Those who are suffering in mind, body, and spirit, right? How about just those who are suffering? Period. That would probably be a better prayer, because it's still showing my Western influence of trying to say, and this is where the Reformed Church goes down, I think, the wrong path. They want to say they're spiritually ascending, or my spirit is going to be with the Lord. Or when I participate in the Lord's Supper, I symbolically or spiritually commune with the living God. Not that he would tangibly come down to me, become his very body and blood, and I would consume him. They'd be like, that can't be. It's like, well, that's what he said, so we're going to go with that. Well, that can't be. I'm like, right, because you're a human who can't rationalize everything. This is another good reason to be Lutheran, that we can hold things to be true at the same time in tension. And if you can't figure it out, well, that's because it's a God thing, not a you thing. Can you see why that would, where you could go down that path with a lot of things when you try to rationalize out the faith? There are some things that are very rational, and there's some things I will never understand. Yeah. I'm guessing that, yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of surprises when you get to heaven, and I'm thinking they're going to be pleasant surprises. Yeah, really good ones. This actually came up in my home visit today. It's a couple, right? And we were talking about this vision of heaven, and they were joking again about the sea thing. To bring this full circle, right? So they're joking about, that's, and then like, oh yeah, and we're not going to be married, are we? I'm like, yeah, that's a thing too. But we'll know each other, right? I'm like, well, yeah, you'll know each other. You're just not going to have that vocation anymore. Marriage is a vocation. It's a calling, and it's a calling for here and for now on this earth. But that vocation isn't going to be necessary in the new heavens and new earth, is essentially what Christ has told us. Oh, yeah.
God is outside of time. Are we in or outside of time?
You and I are in time. God is outside. So when he's in this vision, when is this happening? All the time. But no, it had to be after, because there's the apostles, right? So this is where I agree with Luke. We try not to put a stopwatch on God. When's this happening? When God does his God thing. And so is it happening right now? I would say sure, yeah. Is it happening in the future? Yes. In fact, really, Revelation is a vision of the future, right? On what's going to happen in the new heavens and the new earth. It's a very hopeful book. It points to something beyond this. So it's the now and not yet aspects of the kingdom. So like we had the Lord's Supper, that's now, but it's a foretaste of this thing that's yet to come. It's both now and then, and you're mystically connected outside of time with these events, which hurts your head if you think about it, which I know you want to hurt your head, Eric. I know you love hurting your head that way. But you like to rationalize things like I do. We're math people, right? We like to rationalize things out. And we try to take that to the nth degree, and when you plumb that depth and you get there, you always seem to find Jesus. So that's the fun part about doing theology and reading the Book of Concord and going to Bible studies and learning the faith. Until the day you die, this is a good thing. Has this been edifying? Have you learned anything? Is there something you didn't?